Good morning. Look at this crowd first thing. This is awesome. You guys are awesome. Welcome to CEDIA Expo 2019. I'm Leanne Wood, and I'm part of the PR and social media team for the show. And I'm very excited to be the MC of the Smart Stage powered by CE Pro. We have 3 days of packed programming with events such as Tech Bites and Tech Starter, the CE Pro Product and Project Awards, and Tech Talks to dive into hot topics for everyone involved in this great industry. So let's get started. To kick off the Smart Stage for 2019, we have a company that you may have heard of, Google. Ring any bells? Today's Tech Talk, sponsored by Google Nest, will dive into the most important themes in today's connected home. I'd like to introduce the panel moderator, Greg Kahn, President and CEO, Internet of Things Consortium. There's Greg, who will then introduce our panelists from Google. Greg, welcome to the Smart Stage.
Thank you. Terrific to meet you. Good morning, everybody. How is everyone doing this morning? Good? First up at CEDIA. Well, I'm thrilled to... Little vibration there. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. We'll be adaptive. We're all awake now. We're all awake, which is a good thing. I'm thrilled to open up CEDIA 2019 on the Tech Talk stage with a conversation of two incredible minds and executives in the smart home industry. And the topic of this discussion today is welcome to the helpful home, how Google Nest is transforming connected life. I'm going to start on my right here with Michele Chambers-Turner. And if you could just give a brief introduction to yourself, what you do, your interest in the smart home, and your specific role at Google.
Sure. So hi, I'm Michele. I run the smart home ecosystem for Google. I've been with Google/Nest for just over 4 years. I started out, I'm on the product side, so the product development aspects of smart home. Started out at Nest itself, running software a few years back, and then ran the home security product line, so all of Nest cameras, the Nest doorbell, the Nest security system, and that was where I got started there. Prior to that, I was a little bit of a smart home aficionado. We were early into Nest with the Nest thermostat and Nest Protect, and it was an area that had, connecting the home and making things simpler and being able to actually see things remotely and do things remotely. As the mom of a busy family was really important to me. So that utility factor, that functionality that it brought to my family was really important. So when I started talking to Nest, it was a really cool opportunity, and I saw a way that we could actually make life better for people. Fast forward to about 18 months ago, we pulled Nest and Google together. I was really passionate about what we call now building out the helpful home. So I jumped into working with our partners to build up our ecosystem, and that's been where my focus has been lately. And so CEDIA is a really important show for us. We have so many partners here that I'm looking forward to talking to more today, and looking forward to talking to our pro community, because you really are on the front lines as smart home has become more mainstream. And I'm like, yeah, we installed our first thermostat, ignored the warning to turn off the power, and just went ahead and did it. But most people don't do that. They see this thing that says turn off the power, and they're immediately like, I can't install this thing. Same thing with the doorbell. And we have a lot of products in smart home today that need your help. So I'm super excited to be at CEDIA again, and looking forward to speaking with you later.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks.
Gene.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. So I'm Gene Lanoy. I run our professional channel business here at Google Nest. Been with Nest for 6 years. My first CEDIA was back in 2013. Everything that has to do with this channel, the wholesale distribution, the professional installers, the custom integrators, myself and my team, that's why we're here. That whole business revolves around what I do. So happy to be here.
Well, terrific. Let's dive in, because we have a lot to chat about in this hour session. So I wanted to start with a few interesting statistics about the connected home, which is really, really evolved in the past couple of years since I've been doing the work that we're doing with the Internet of Things Consortium. But there's a ton of growth, disruption, and evolution that's taking place, and Google has really been the lead in the growth of this market. So here are a couple of stats to start with. According to Parks Associates, 43% of broadband households intend to purchase a smart home device in 2019. IDC estimates that the global market for smart home devices will grow 27% this year alone to 833 million shipments. And the Consumer Technology Association estimates that 31% of US homes now own a smart speaker, which is an increase from 8% in 2016, a huge rise. While these statistics are clearly impressive, we know that homeowners are looking for more than just devices and gadgets. They're looking for a helpful home with products that work more seamlessly together. So, we're here at CEDIA Pro Summit, and this opening question is to both, but I'll start with Gene here, is that one of the major trends that we're seeing in the connected home marketplace is this movement from a do-it-yourself model to a do-it-for-me solution. Can you explain, Gene, why this shift is taking place and why is it happening now?
Yeah, thankfully it is happening. It makes the show even more relevant. But I think there's a few different moving pieces to why we're watching this take place. The one is the portfolio, right? The portfolio is expanded. As we started off with a thermostat, now there's thermostats, there's cameras, there's multiple cameras, you got indoor, you got outdoor, you got doorbell, there's security systems, there's smoke and CO alarms, Wi-Fi mesh networks, and of course voice assistants. And when you start to, it's one thing if you're going to maybe take on a weekend project of, I'm going to be like Michele and blow my fuse by not shutting off the power to my system before I install it. That's okay, but to burden yourself with ladders, cordless drills, figuring out how to hide wires, that's what this industry is all about. And when you run into a big portfolio, now you have the integration opportunities. A lot of the things that Michele has done in the background of creating these partnerships with different companies where our voice assistance products are working with other manufacturers to create these ecosystems within a home. That starts to get a little bit more complex no matter how simple we try to do it. If I just think about my own life, I'm capable. I could mow my own lawn. I choose not to. So you have not only, call it breadth of portfolio, some of the complexity of some of the opportunities of the integration that as a professional you know about, as a first-time user you may not, to just point of convenience, right? Not having to spend your whole weekend hanging things and putting things around. And then with all of that on top, you have affordability, right? The products themselves are really set up around a mass market opportunity. And when you get to mass market, that's where you start to run into a lot of people, you're past early adoption and you're past DIY. Now this next generation, where some of the statistics that you talk about, Greg, that's a whole nother generation, a whole nother demographic of people that are deciding to step in. They want the benefits, but they don't necessarily want to deal with the installation side. We all have busy lives and things that we, concentrate on. So it's not just one thing that I think is, driving the larger DIFM market. I think it's just a multitude of different points that are coming in that thankfully are helping to grow this business. Well, one observation for me is, I've been at every single CEDIA since 2013, and the difference of 2013 to where we are today, smart was definitely becoming alive in 2013, but the amount of, and this show was really dedicated more around, call it the automation side, and now what you see is this blend of the two, where smart is definitely a huge part of the business opportunity versus just maybe being kind of a niche thing. So a lot of different points in there.
We're going to dive into a lot of that throughout the hour. Michele, your perspective.
So yeah, I agree with Gene. I think I haven't been at CEDIA as many years, but I think this is at least my third or fourth year here. So, and it has changed a lot. when we look at what's happening with consumers in the connected home space, we've gone from, maybe having one connected device, unless something was pre-configured in their home, or they were, an early X10 adopter where they were, really like to craft all this stuff themselves. They had maybe one, maybe a couple light bulbs, maybe one plug, maybe a thermostat, and now today people have upwards of 10 to 20 devices in their home. This is what I see as the big shift, right? People are putting more and more of these devices in their home together. At Google, we like to talk about having whole home solutions. That's how you enable the helpful home. If these things don't work together well, it's not a helpful home. And you can't have a whole home solution with one or two products. You need to be able to start connecting your lights, your thermostat, your security system. We're seeing a lot of growth actually in connected appliances as well. Getting that right is hard. We have well over 30,000 devices that work with the Google Assistant today. We're at over 3,500 partners that work with us. There are a lot of choices out there for consumers. And now we've reached that point where people really want to connect their home. They're starting to see the advantages of the connected home, and they don't know how to do it. It's daunting for them. I'm going to go into a kitchen remodel this fall. It's even daunting for me. I'm sitting in the back, and I know this industry, and I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to make sure that my kitchen is smart? And there are so many options for even those of us that understand what these options are, how things work together. We understand the different protocols on the back end. It's still confusing for somebody like me. For the consumers that are out there today, this is a huge opportunity for you guys to actually go out and enable that helpful home and bring a lot of clarity to the uncertainty of consumers. So even if you just get to know one or two areas of smart home really, really well, figure out what you can bring to that consumer and make that whole installation and experience, thank you, Jean, process simpler and easier. This is a huge win, and the time is right. 4 years ago when we were here, it was one product, right? Yep. Now we have a plethora of products. Consumers are looking at this, and they're going, how do I make all this stuff work together? There are also a lot of consumers that are out there. We call them the early mainstream adopters. They are putting all this stuff into their house. So they'll have Hue lights, they'll have TP-Link switches, they'll have Nest cams, they might have an Ecobee thermostat, sorry, Jean, and they've got a mix of stuff in their house. How does this all work together? This is a great opportunity for you guys to come in and help them streamline this and really deliver on that helpful home experience. Google can't do this by ourselves. We really rely on our pro community to enable this for all of our mutual customers.
Yeah, and just one additional point on that. It doesn't take away from what the main side of what CEDIA was built on. This is an incremental opportunity, right? So it's an and, not an or situation.
Yeah.
Let's dig into that a little bit, Jean, in terms of the Google portfolio, specifically the Nest portfolio. For the professional installer community, how are you helping them in that incremental move? Right, consumers have started out with one or two products. Now they're starting to buy more and more and more. But how are you as Google Nest helping the installer community take that incremental move?
Yeah, so without trying to sound like a little bit of an infomercial, there's a couple different ways that we do it. So I've got a team that's scattered around the country in different geographic locations, but probably the most impactful way that we're doing this is through the channel partners themselves. So wherever an integrator is doing their business, at wholesale levels, at manufacturer levels, our products, our training, all of that is appearing in those same locations. You're not having to go outside of your comfort zone to get access to the equipment, get access to the training. We're doing more and more podcasts around some of the business opportunity, and we go across multiple trades. And what's also interesting is watching how these other trades are really interested in what CEDIA does. But at the end of the day, I'll tell you, the CEDIA community grabs onto the technology quicker, faster, with more interest than some of the other trade spaces that we work in. It's a multitude of partnerships with wholesale distribution, being at the right locations where everybody knows and is comfortable doing business, to providing simple access to training online through our Nest Pro portal, and trying to just get those different integrations, those different product launches. It's an uphill battle of trying to cascade this information out, but something that we have an entire team, marketing, sales, and BD, that is really focused on trying to help make that happen for the installer.
You're really leading in this space. That's clear. I want to pivot a little bit to talk about digital assistants and voice. So, Michele, at the Consumer Electronics Show about 4 years ago, I hosted a panel on voice. And it was the first time that it was ever a formal panel on the topic, and a lot of industry executives said, I'm not really sure I believe in that platform. And here we are 4 years later, and what a world of difference we're in. There's more than just expanding interest in voice. It's almost base level. And Google is a leader in voice and digital assistants. Can you talk about how Google is integrating these features into its home platform?
Yeah. So, you're absolutely right, Greg. We have seen the growth of ambient computing. We think about it at Google as, we've gone through these different stages of technology. We've all seen it, right? We went from PC to mobile, and now we're seeing this shift from mobile. It's not from mobile, but this new technology platform in ambient computing. And it's really starting to take off because it's enabling consumers to do things in a different and more seamless way. It's really, I think, been transformative for the smart home industry. I talked to lighting manufacturers, and yes, we've had these products out there for years. It was the growth of, frankly, the Google Assistant technologies, the Amazon Alexa technologies, Siri, that all of a sudden, when you could control these devices by voice, that really saw them, the utility of them shoot up. And it's been transformative. And so this is a central platform to Google, and this is what the Google Nest team really roots itself in. We work very closely with the Google Assistant team, and everything that we think about is how do we make these, from a platform level, how do we make all of our devices work in an ambient environment, right? And how do we make that ambient computing world so deliver on the promise of the helpful home for us. When we think about the ambient technologies, though, we also think about how do we, what are the things that we're bringing together to make it simpler and easier for consumers. A lot of what you can do today, we've created these capabilities that are routines. Super simple. I don't know how many of you have ever played with these. If you haven't, and you've got a Google Assistant or you've got the other one, give it a try. But I can, when I leave my house in the morning, I say, okay, gee, I'm leaving. And it knows to turn off the lights, it sets my thermostat to eco mode, and it makes sure that my doors are locked, right? It also sets my security system. Every night before I go to bed, okay, gee, good night. It tells me what my calendar event is for the next day. It tells me what the weather is. And it asks me what time I want the alarm set for. It makes sure the security system is armed, that the doors are locked, the lights are off. If I want my front lights on, it can have my front lights on. So it's the ability to stitch together all of these different devices that are in my home. These are really easy to set up. They are not necessarily easy for consumers to set up. So as you're going into homes to do these installations, this is another potential value add area for you guys, is to understand how to set up these very simple custom routines just by knowing what people have in their home. Talk to your customer about what they'd like to be able to enable and just set it up for them within their app. And it's what makes the helpful home truly helpful, because you're not doing these voice interactions one by one. Super customizable. You can tailor it to anything that people have in their homes. And again, we've got so many devices that are connected today that it's really simple to create these unique customizations that work well with whatever the devices are that people have in their environments. But that's how we're starting to see this shift too. I think we're going to see a lot of growth in what we call the routines capabilities, because that's delivering on the simplicity promise of the helpful home.
Michelle, the lights in my home go on when the Miami Dolphins score, which does not happen very often this year, but it's
don't plan on a lot.
it's not. Maybe if I pick the other team when they score, it'll work a lot more. Super helpful. Routines are really helping to build this industry, and I think they're, as you mentioned, they're simple in the mindset of why they're developed, but for a consumer, it's tricky to figure out, how do I actually get this set up? So for the pro community, it's a big opportunity for you to lead and to consult them on what routines are the most useful. Gene, I wanted to share a little bit. You mentioned that the CEDIA community, which is incredibly passionate, is bleeding edge when it leads to technology growth, right? But the world that you're in keeps growing in terms of the complexity and the breadth, right, of the channels that you're managing and the products that you're managing. So you've worked with custom AV integration, HVAC, electrical, security, independently, right? There's now this interesting crossover that's taking place between them, and technology is that horizontal layer that's bringing them together. What do you think is happening? Why this crossover is taking place?
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm causing that feedback, so apologies if I am.
I'm not sure who is.
Okay. I think it's because if I back up a little bit, very rarely, and I have yet to see, there's a few cases, but very rarely will you see a van or a truck going down the side of the road that says Greg's Smart Home. What you have is custom integrators that are deciding to do smart home. You have HVAC that's deciding that they're going to participate, electrical, security. It hasn't necessarily landed within its own specific area. These are becoming incremental revenue opportunities that expand the baseline portfolio of what has made a contractor or a pro successful today. So I think what we're kind of watching is this evolution of the smart home business, where will it land where one day there is just Greg's Smart Home on the side of a van? Hope so. It feels like we're going to actually end up there sooner rather than later. But it is because the products themselves are touching so many points of the home. You mentioned HVAC, security, home automation, electrical. There's plumbing. There's solar. We're witnessing a huge uplift on the connectivity side, where contractors that are bringing high-speed internet into the homes. This is obviously a key foundation to the experience of having a smart, helpful home, is making sure that you do have that connection in the home. So we're watching a lot of different trades start to figure out where their niche and where their opening is, and then they start to become very familiar and comfortable with the products. So they start to participate with those other products in a pretty quick manner. We get to watch this from our side of the business, where we started off, as an example, with a wholesaler where we only sold them thermostats, and they were in the HVAC wholesale business, but suddenly they're selling outdoor cameras, they're selling doorbells, they're using voice assistance integrations. So it's really, kind of interesting to watch how these other trades do come in. But I think it's just because there are so many entry points, depending upon where you are at a trade level, that allows you to start to participate. Michele talked about ambient computing. This is really about where you could have something that is smart and connected on a plumbing side, that is over on the other side talking to our assistant and letting someone know whether or not there's flow happening in a house, that there's nobody there. That information is computing, and that information is then being delivered. And that's where it becomes super helpful. That can happen in almost any trade. So yeah, we're watching a convergence really happen, which is kind of cool.
Very cool. And exciting, and a big business opportunity, I think, for everybody here today. Michele, I want to build on that a little bit and talk about data. So this connectivity is enabling individual components to generate a ton of data, which about individual users that could be helpful, right, in terms of helping understanding their routines, providing them with useful information, et cetera, and providing a better overall experience in that connected home. How do you see the, from your lens on Google, how do you see the future of leveraging all this big data that's coming in from plumbing, that's coming in from electricity, that's coming in from the TV set to create a personalized experience
that's a great question. I think that's the next step, and what we're all looking at and super excited about, frankly. These devices that we put in the homes, whether it's sensors from a security system or it's a connected thermostat and temp sensors around the house, et cetera, we have a lot of sensors that we have now put throughout homes. And all of that sensor data, like you said, Greg, feeds in. Google has a ton of this data. The data that we collect tends to be around the state of the device. But we can start, through AI, start figuring out, what do these signals mean? And we can deliver kind of exponentially more useful experiences. And Jean just actually touched on this with, if you have a water leak, you want to know. You guys all know how expensive that is. I've had a flood. It's unbelievably expensive to a consumer. So the value to be able to detect that early is insanely high for a consumer. That is not a hard sell for you, right? Especially for anybody that's been through a flood. Yeah. But we can start doing even more interesting things, like we can understand that if your garage door is always closed by 9 a.m. Weekday mornings, and it's open one Thursday morning at 10 o'clock, or it opened at 10 o'clock, you need to get a notification on that, right, as a user. And so we can say, wow, the pattern is X. This is an anomaly in that pattern from the data that's coming in. And then we can say, hey, consumer, hey, Bob, you've got to, this is a change. This isn't normal. Do you want to do something about that? And that starts to become really proactively helpful to the consumer. Routines are interesting, and they're pretty simple to set up, and that's really the first stretch of this. But when we can start being proactively helpful in the home and solve problems for consumers before they become a problem, that's where really I think we bring the value to the smart home over time. And that's where a lot of the value to this is, and where you guys can come in, because you can start explaining to consumers how this can work. We've got, the garage door is just one example. There's a lot of different things in the home. Let's say that that the lights in the kids' bedroom are supposed to go out. They go out every night at 8 o'clock because you're trying to get your kids in bed. And you get a notification that the lights in the kids' bedroom are on at 8:30 or 9 o'clock. Well, you're going to go check that out, right? Because maybe the kids are up running around, or maybe somebody's sick. So getting those patterns, those anomaly patterns from the data start to become very important. The other area where I think we're going to see this become super important is in health and wellness over time. And this isn't a big health and wellness show, but there are things that we can start understanding about patterns in the home related particularly to elder care and falls, where we can detect if somebody, with technology that's in the home and sensors in the home, is there somebody who should be moving who hasn't been moving? Mom always makes it into the kitchen by 9 o'clock in the morning, and Mom didn't make it into the kitchen this morning. Nobody arrived. Should I check on Mom, right? So we're going to see this type of sensor anomaly data being aggregated and be able to deliver not just helpful experiences, but in some cases, experiences that can be important to life and safety. So that's where I think we're going with this. We're a ways off from it, but that is the power of having data in the home, is to be able to deliver these proactively helpful experiences and really change the way people can live in their homes over time.
Michele, we're going to have a session on health and wellness at Google Nest Pro's booth tomorrow with two of your partners, Delos Living and Kohler, so it'll be a great kind of pickup on that. Yeah. One of the use cases in my home, it's a little bit of a fun one. I travel a lot for what we do for a living, as you do as well, and my kids call me from the doorbell now. It used to be the group text, and now it's the, hey dad, I'm here, and it appears on my watch, and it's fun. But if they don't call, it's, I'd want to know what's sort of happening. So there's a real utility, and there's also an entertainment aspect of this as well, which is very relevant to this community. Jean, I want to pick up on that and talk a little bit about partnerships. Yeah. So the consortium that I lead is about bringing together companies to form partnerships. You mentioned all these different industries that are coming together at once, yep. Right? And this is an amalgamation of that, I think, as CEDIA grows, and now the same owners with the Kitchen and Bath Show, there's more and more partners that are going to be coming together. In your business, you run the Pro channel. What partnerships do you see emerging that perhaps are a little bit surprising, and which would you like to see take shape that haven't yet taken shape?
That's a really good question. There's a lot of volume right now. I think for right now, most things are really focused on the home. I think the next phase of that is you're going to start to see that go into small business. There's some of those same opportunities exist whether or not you own a restaurant or a hair salon or even a car dealership, with interaction of the different things that are happening in the buildings. Where there may be more opportunities, I think there's additional opportunities with utility companies. Some of the information around helping people save energy. The appliances in the home. We continue to do a ton of work with all the different white good manufacturers. And then the thing that is also speeding up and we're watching happen, and it's one of the reasons that we're here, is with the home automation platforms. We've also started to see a ton of work where our Google Assistant is now part of that. Part of what we're focused on is if you're in the trade business, you're looking to do voice assistance, which is going to be a critical path for everyone in the industry. We want to make sure that we're positioning Google Assistant as that voice assistant for the trade business. So it's through the partnerships with the other manufacturers. It's through making sure that we're aligned in the different sectors of business where we see the bigger opportunities. Multifamily is another area where there's just huge expansion opportunities for us. If you think about, somebody's owning a building and they've got lots of different equipment and lots of different cost structure within that, being able to have that stuff report in and give awareness to if there's a water leak, if there is something that's too hot or too cold, if there are lights that are left on, if there are doors that are unlocked in unrented spaces. This is all starts to become critical information. So for us, the tough part is creating prioritization on where do we go first, because the menu of the different business opportunities is big. But I think it's multifamily. I think it's with the utility providers, the different platforms of home automation, and then we've got this other lingering opportunity that we're also anxious about around some of the small business.
That's a great list. I agree, as it gets complex, there is a ton of interest from different industry verticals. So the prioritization is an interesting challenge, I think, for everybody, for you to understand what your customers also are looking for within their homes. I want to pivot a little bit and talk about privacy and security because it's very important to consumers. It's very important to the industry at large. And it's really an issue that Google Nest has taken very, very seriously and has proactively really gotten on top of. Google itself, the mission has always been to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful for everybody. And you guys have taken on privacy and security as your top priority, Google has. So Michele, directed to you, what do you believe, why do you believe that an ecosystem that values data protection and privacy, we're talking about all this data that's going to be generated from all these different devices, and that is designed with security in mind, is essential in today's digital world?
Yeah, this is a great question, and it's very top of mind for us. We came out with our privacy policy and standards and our privacy position at Google I/O this year. And I mean, we just released a beautiful smart display that has a camera on it. And with that, we said, we're going to have cameras in people's homes, which we've had for quite a while. We need to be really vigilant around what happens with the data. This is consumers' data. That picture that I painted for you guys a little while ago on being able to have this proactively helpful home, that is not possible without data, but that is not possible if we don't trust and safeguard that data for consumers. And the way that we've been thinking about it is this. So we, when we started with this back in 2014, and when Works with Nest, which some of you are familiar with, started back in 2014, there's just a thermostat. people had maybe one, unless they had bought into an X10 system or they had a security system based on Z-Wave or something, they had maybe 1 or 2 smart devices in their home tops. They knew where it came from, and it really wasn't talking to anything else. And now we're in an environment today where these people have 10, 20 devices in their home. They don't know where those devices necessarily came from. They don't necessarily even know the manufacturer that well. They don't know the background of the manufacturer. And the reality is, in a smart home, the security of your home is only as strong as the weakest link, the weakest device that you have, the security of the weakest device that you have in that home. And so when we took a step back and said, what do we need to be delivering in terms of security for our ecosystem? We said we have to build in security from the ground up. And that means we have to vet our partners, and we can't just have any partner, consumers having access to any partner in these devices talking together. So we need to be building the security from the ground up at the platform level. We need to make sure that the partners that we work with, if these devices are talking to each other in the home, that those devices have been tested to ensure that they meet our quality and our privacy and security guidelines and our standards. And this is something that we're leaning into. Look, consumers don't know, and it's not fair to put that burden onto the consumer, right? It's really hard for it's hard for consumers to figure out which smart plug to buy. It's really hard for consumers to figure out which smart plug has the best privacy and security built in from the ground up, which smart plug is going to be able to protect their data. And at Google, we feel like that is something that we need to take on for the industry. And so that is our commitment to our consumers and our commitment to you guys, because that's not your job either, but you want to deliver a safe and secure home for your customers. And it's important to us that we are vetting these partners, and that when we enable these integrations, they're enabled with partners that we know are meeting the privacy and security guidelines and standards that we're setting out. So that's really where we're at on this. It's an evolving area, but we feel super strongly about this, and our ecosystem is going to be evolving around those lines.
Yeah, and it's also just set up that way to also help the installers deal with that, right? Because there are questions, there are consumers that are starting to ask questions around that. If we can help build that platform where the consideration of privacy and security is not in question, that makes it easier for the network to be able, for the pros to be able to do their job inside homes.
So Michele, to kind of build on what you're talking about, Google has announced that you're going to be sunsetting Works with Nest and moving to Works with Google Assistant. So specific to the data, can you share a little bit about what data Google collects and how it will be used?
So the main data that we collect today relative to Works with Google Assistant is around the state of the device in the home. And that state data, it sounds complicated. All it is the light bulb on or off? Is the dishwasher running or is it off? But we also collect, is your security system armed or disarmed? And so we started, and we have a number of partners here today that we've been working with this on, because they have a contract to their customers. Why should Google have the data of whether a security system is armed or disarmed, right? So some of the things that we've been doing is they are, before, if somebody has a security system in their home, before that security system can be controlled by the Google Assistant, that customer has to say, yes, I am okay with you, security system provider, giving that information to Google, because they have to explicitly opt into that. We want to make sure that the customers are in control of that data. It's super important.
Consent.
It's completely consumer consent, yeah. Right? And being really, really explicit with consumers on what they're signing up for. We all know today, I mean, how many of us click through terms of service and we don't read them, right? When it comes to sensitive devices, things like security systems, cameras, the things that are in your home, health and wellness devices, we want consumers to really understand what they're allowing Google to have access to. And then we're being very clear on what we're doing with that data. So state data for us, light bulb on or off, is stored in the back end of the Google Assistant smart home piece is something we call the home graph, and it tells you about, the room, the name of the device in the room, what type of device it is, etc. And in that effectively database about the home is where we store the state data. that state data isn't kept forever. It's ephemeral. It stays, because we don't need, heaven forbid, we collected everybody's light bulb data forever on whether it was on or off. I mean, it's not helpful to us to have that. So it's ephemeral. We don't keep it around for very long. But that data, we made an explicit decision to make sure that data is never shared with our ad data. And so we actually cut that cord a couple quarters back and said the data that's on state does not get shared into any of Google's ad server data. And that's a big concern for our partners. Our partners are like, well, wait, if you're putting data about my dishwasher into the ad server, how do I know that you're not going to be serving up ads on somebody else's dishwasher to my customers? And yeah, we smile, but it's a real concern actually for a lot of our partners.
We get
right?
asked the question.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so this is the level of data protection that we're looking at. It's an area that is still a little bit early. We're still figuring out because the space is still early. But these are the types of things we're working with our partners together to figure out what is the best, safest experience for consumers. State data is really important though, because if I say, okay, G, turn the thermostat up a little bit, make it a little warmer in here. Well, the thermostat has to know what the temperature is to understand what a little warmer is, right? Is the thermostat at 62 or is it at 75, right? A little warmer might be moving it up 1 degree or it might be moving up 4 degrees. And so understanding the state of that thermostat is important to delivering that helpful home experience. It's critical to the assistant working well.
But to your point, that happens, it doesn't need to be a Nest or Google, which would be wrong, right, if you're not using it. But it doesn't need to be a Nest or a Google thermostat. Right. So that third-party product reporting that state is how that enables that action to happen.
Yep, it's all 30,000 plus devices that work with the assistant. These are not just Nest devices. Thanks for clarifying.
It's such an important topic that I know that we're going to be discussing a lot more with this community as we go forward, because it's important to consumers, but at the same time, a lot of consumers want to give their information too, because it's helpful if there's the appropriate value exchange, and they're happy to play along. I want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A, but there are a couple more questions that I want to ask. And one is, we touched a little bit upon health and wellness. I want to talk about the senior community a bit. There's the industry, I say the broader industry, media and tech, often talks about millennials and the adoption of all of these great technologies, but there's a huge population that's aging, right, in place. In 2050, the population of Americans 65 and older is projected to double from today's number to 83.7 million. What are your thoughts around kind of this market as it relates to existing customers that have a lot of time, a lot of disposable income, and are looking for new solutions?
From my point of view, I think it's kind of what a great opportunity. When you were mentioning the health and wellness piece earlier, on the tip of my tongue was just incremental opportunity. You've got a demographic that's not interested probably in climbing a ladder, going in the attic, hiding wires, reading how to create connections. They really want to have this set up. So I think it's probably, call it a concierge demographic, which from a pro perspective is just, not only do we have this growing trend business, but now we're going to have this other incremental opportunity, and it's not going to be overly complex to participate in it, whether or not it is just having a camera that watches mom, and we help know when she took her medication or when she didn't take her medication. So those simple things, I think, are going to be open to trades and businesses that aren't necessarily in the healthcare industry.
Concierge is a very interesting phrase. I think we may need to tweet that out today. I like that as a big business opportunity. Michele?
This is an area that it's very personal to me. My mother-in-law is in her 80s, and she is aging in place. She also has severe dementia. She's fortunate enough to be able to have care come into the house. I have 7 Nest cams around her house, inside and out. And I have those to be able to, my sister-in-law lives closer. She's the one who primarily watches. She freaks out if she can't get a hold of mom within about 5 minutes. And so a lot of it, and I think this is the interesting perspective, my mother-in-law has no idea at this point that those cameras are in her house. It's for peace of mind for my sister-in-law, who too many times dropped everything and rushed a half an hour over to mom's house while calling the police to go check on her to make sure that everything was okay. And so it's not just the senior that we're talking about, it's the caretaker. It's going to be a lot of us, right? And being able to set up these systems in the house, and by the way, 7 cameras around someone's house is highly invasive. I mean, we tell her caretakers that the cameras are there. We let them know, that the sound is off and all of that. It's still really invasive. So what's cool about this industry is we're seeing a lot of companies with new types of products that are far less invasive, but they can be really actively helpful in the home. There's some new technologies that are coming out around radar that I think we're going to see in the market in the next 3 years that can do a very capable job of fall detection and then notification. I think your market, though, is not just going to be the aging in place senior. It's going to be the people who love them and want to take care of them and need to be able to keep an eye on them, but want to make sure that they're not doing it in a way that is really invasive. Because, a lot of parents, unlike my mother-in-law, they're fine. But if you've got, somebody who's in their 80s and they do fall in the bathroom, right? You want to make sure that they've got a way to communicate out. Smart speakers are going to be another, you can do calling from smart speakers today. To be able to have a smart speaker in your bathroom, be able to say, okay, G, call Michele, and, call me, can't get up off the floor, but they can hear you from a speaker. That's transformative. It's actively helpful for people. So this is going to be a big area. I think this is an area where we talk about this a lot inside of Google. I think this is the next big wave for smart devices in the home. And it's an area where we can pull together some solutions that are going to save lives. They're going to bring a ton of peace of mind to consumers. And they're not single point solutions. So again, it's going to be a collection of devices. This is where you guys come in to craft these solutions in these homes, customize these solutions in these homes for consumers to help design whatever works best for their particular situation.
That's right. I want to, for everybody in the audience, I want to talk a little bit about pricing. And Gene, you mentioned the word incrementality quite a bit today, in terms of incremental solutions that are being provided. So for the community that's assembled here today, if we were having this conversation let's call it 3 years ago, we would hear that pricing was a barrier from the smart home, that there was a perception that, how many products do I have to buy to really create a home? I think that's changing in the marketplace now. But, for this group here, what are the product or products that you're seeing in the marketplace? There's sort of that gateway to building bigger businesses. What are you seeing consumers wanting to spend money on? They're helping to open up new channels.
Yeah, obviously, the voice assistant devices, the growth in that area, people are realizing not only is it helpful, but there's an entertainment piece to that, whether it's playing music, casting your favorite show, finding out when your favorite show is on, listening to news. So there's a huge wave of adoption there. As far as which products within our portfolio are we watching pros and contractors use, you look at the doorbell business. That has been something, I know companies that have literally started and all they're doing is doorbells. They're concentrating on doorbell as an additive. And a lot of that has to do with the way that people are leading their lives, the way that they're doing their shopping, right? They want to be able to know when they had a package delivered. And so that within itself has been a gateway. It started with the thermostat. It's one of the reasons we're so heavy in the HVAC industry. That was their gateway into smart home. But I think some of it really just kind of depends on where you are from a trade aspect. But yeah, we've seen voice assistants, cameras, obviously, people wanting to make sure that they are
watching their biggest asset, that they have awareness of what's happening on the inside, whether or not it's mom healthy, or if it's just the safety of the home itself, or watching their kids come home at a certain time. So those have all been entry points, and we continue to watch where it went from early adopter DIY to now people are starting to see it in other people's homes, see it in projects on TV, and now they're saying, hey, I want that, and that isn't that necessarily one product. It is this culmination of products, some of it first party, Google, other pieces, just other manufacturers who are leveraging our ecosystem to enhance the connectivity of their products. So lots of different avenues, so lots of different opportunities as well.
If I can just add on to that, that whole front door experience. I think another product are smart locks.
Yes.
And we've done a bunch of research on smart locks. I mean, we have one, and the assistant works with all of them. Really helpful product. But what we're seeing with that is consumers don't know about it. So if I would, the research that we've done at Google is that people love smart locks. They love the idea of smart locks. They're super convenient, but a lot of consumers don't even know about it. So if installation of a smart lock, or if people are trying to think about how do I secure my front door experience, they're looking at a doorbell. Lock is obviously a complementary product, but just be aware, your customers may not even know that there is such a thing on the market, or how they work, or anything like that. And they're a pain in the neck to install. We've done a couple of them. My husband did more of them. He doesn't like them.
You're better off to have a pro.
Yes. I've happily hired anybody to do that.
+1 on that, hiring a pro to install the smart lock. We are seeing a huge integration between voice and video, and the work that we're doing, and you kind of touched on that a bit, and even within locks and doorbells too, we're starting to see that integration, and with 5G around the pike, I think it's something really interesting for this community to consider about products and voice and video that bundle them together. I want to get to questions, so I'm going to conclude with this. Okay. One word of advice from each of you to the install community, what would it be? And I'll start with you, Michele.
Wow. I think we said this earlier, but this is a incremental opportunity on top of what you're doing today, and it's growing, as Greg's stats in the beginning indicated, very fast. I think you're going to see, as we make these experiences more seamless, you're going to see the opportunity for a lot more business through all of these smart products. I encourage, Jean's got the Nest Pro site has a ton of resources on this. I encourage you, if you're interested, learn more. This is a great opportunity for you guys to expand your portfolios and do more in the business. And one other thing I would ask is give us feedback. It's still a nascent space, and you guys are on the front lines of this. From my standpoint, myself, my team, we've got chunk of my team here today. We'd really like to get feedback from you guys on where we need to do better, where some of the pain points are, where some of the confusion is in smart homes. So we would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Gene.
Yeah, I would say I feel like we wear the word out, but it is the truly word. For this community, it's not, am I in the home automation business with platforms, or am I in the smart home, helpful home business? It's not an either or, it is an and. The two businesses work really strongly together. The thing that the smart and the connected home brings, to Michele's point, it is this mass market adoption. Where the industry kind of looked for jobs that are maybe over $10,000, hoping to lean into 30 and 50 and above. Now there is a ton of $3,000 jobs, right? That help lead and create that customer opportunity where, you can still have that AV discussion. You can still talk about, motorized shades, or wherever your business niche tends to be. We're bringing in those new customer opportunities, and I think that's the thing to latch onto if you haven't. Still early, still plenty of time. But it is not. If it's something I've learned over the years from 2013 of my first CEDIA to today was many of those conversations with different integrators where they were trying to decide, do I want to play in the space? As a former contractor company owner, I would have a hard time on figuring out why I wouldn't want to be in the space because there's so many pluses to the business.
If I can make one more comment on that. Great example of how this is coming together. Our friends at Control4 just announced yesterday that they're live with the Google Assistant.
Yes.
It was a big announcement. So I think that's just a great example of how home automation, a classic home automation company, is now working with ambient computing, working with the assistant. Yes. It's not an either or, it's an and.
That's right.
And just to build on that before we get to questions, Charlie Kindle from Control4 will be at the Google Nest Pro booth right after this. We're going to be having sessions all day today and tomorrow on the Google Nest Pro booth, so please come join us right after this. I want to leave time for you. You're here today to ask questions of the group. If anyone has a question, we probably have time for one or two. Just state your name and the company, please.
So that data actually comes out in the Home app, and there's some new functionality that we can't talk about this too much, but there's new functionality that's going to be coming out in the Google Home app that's going to be showing the consumer, whether it's useful or not to know that their light bulb came on or off in those, at certain times of the day. But we will be adding in that data, and the user can choose to say how much of that data they want to see in the app or not. But yeah. The sharing of data. Yeah, so that is super early for us still. I think that's actually great feedback. We have to figure out a way to, this data is raw and there's a lot of it. And so it's not really useful. So we have to, data is all about how do you abstract it in a layer to make it useful, right? So I think that's something for us to figure out is how will we get that back and give it back to whoever has the permissions to have that data. Certainly the homeowner, the person who has the device, if they choose to give it to the integrator, that is an option that they would have to opt into, I would say. And then we have to figure out how to make that consumable and useful to people. But yeah, and our first way of doing that actually is going to be for the consumer in the Home app.
Meeting with the consumer. Just your name again and the company.
I have a microphone.
We have a mic.
Oh, hi. Jeff Kernbacher, I work for Best Buy. And so I'm wondering, as routines become more and more important, and you have increasingly complex routines that get programmed, is there any plans for an expanded programming platform rather than just in the app? Just because as you get a complex program, it's very difficult to manage. Or same thing with like conflicts, right? Like this routine conflicts with conflict, conflicts with this one. Is there any plans to expand that?
Yeah, it's a couple ways to do this. IFT has been has done a really good job of building a platform out to do that for consumers today. The thing about creating a platform is you have a very small niche of consumers that will actually do the work to kind of program it together. So what we're looking at is how can we, again, abstract that up and create a set of kind of pre-canned routines for people that will just be able to do it. In fact, the assistant routines have that today. It will automatically give a consumer an I'm leaving command or something like that, and then you can go in and customize it. So what we're looking at is how to understand what the most popular and logical routines are, and then based on what you have on your home, suggest routines for you. Because the reality is like I'll go in and create really interesting routines. I was talking to Chris Jones from iRobot last night, and he has these incredibly sophisticated routines. They're really amazing. But he's the CTO of iRobot. So, like normal consumers we're finding just they're scared of these things and they don't really feel comfortable doing it. And as the industry moves into this early mainstream market, we believe that for consumers, we actually have to give them, like, here are routines that are suggested for you based on the devices in your home and make it much simpler for them. So, does that answer your question? Okay.
More looking at it from like an integrator perspective. So, for example, you talk about this, how we actually make the home.
Yeah.
And as we work towards that, right, it's how, yes, we're going to program routines.
I see what you're saying.
As like an integrator, right?
Right.
able to like see everything that's going on in the house.
Yeah.
To really make it helpful and smart and efficient that workforce actually do it. It needs to be easy to create.
You know, we've got some of the fundamental building blocks of that today, but I think that's a great point and something that we should look at.
I think if
Yeah.
there would be something I would just kind of say is I don't know what that was. Today we would probably lean into a company like Control4 or URC or RTI or Crestron for some of that programming custom side, and then the assistant would be in the background creating those voice interactions for those different programs that an integrator may have done on a home. As time goes on and as we get more ambient computing and we collect that data, I think you're going to watch an evolution start to happen where, we're going to learn what things are really common across more, and more customization will happen. But we're in, I would say, an early stage of that, where most of that is still happening on the home automation from a super custom program standpoint. It's happening on a home automation side versus a smart side.
We're out of time. I know this is a conversation that we could easily extend the whole day, but we want to thank you for coming and joining us first up this morning. If we could give a round of applause to Michele and Gene, thank you. Enjoy the show. And please come to the Google Nest Pro booth, where we'll be continuing this conversation throughout the day. Thank you.
Greg.